My name is Nava Ross, and I am a 26-year-old housewife. I never imagined my life would take the turn it did. Growing up, I was the apple of my family's eye. My parents ran a successful business that had been in our family for generations. We never had to worry about money, and I was spoiled in the best ways. My older brother, who was 10 years my senior, always said he would do anything for me. His love was unconditional, and because of him, I never became the stereotypical spoiled rich girl. I had a knack for making friends easily. People often told me I had a friendly vibe, and I enjoyed a wide circle of acquaintances. After graduating from college, I decided to work at a local company, not because I needed the money, but to gain some social experience. It was there that I met Nicholas, my future husband. Nicholas was my mentor at work. He was kind, patient, and always willing to help. I remember the first time we met. He glanced at my employee badge and tilted his head with a smile. "Nedra, right?" he asked. I laughed and corrected him, just like I had during my university days. "It's Nava," I said. He chuckled and said, "That's interesting." That was the beginning of our friendship, which quickly blossomed into something more. After a couple of years of dating, we got married. My parents and brother were thrilled. The wedding was beautiful, and everyone was so happy for us. It was supposed to be the start of a new, wonderful chapter in my life. But things changed soon after our wedding. My mother-in-law, who had seemed so kind during the wedding, began to show her true colors. She was controlling and often made snide remarks about my family and me. My father-in-law, on the other hand, was apologetic but never really stood up to her. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Nicholas called to say he would be late. "Sorry, Nava," he said. "My mom invited me over for dinner. I'll be at my parents' house." I felt a pang of annoyance, but brushed it off. This wasn't the first time his mother had invited him over without telling me. When he finally came home, I confronted him. "Nicholas, you should have let me know," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I already made dinner for you." He sighed and apologized, but I could tell he didn't see the big deal. His mother had a way of making everything seem like it was no big deal. "She just wanted to talk," he said, and she gave me some food to bring home. I looked at the paper bag he handed me and knew without looking that the food inside was spoiled. It was a recurring theme. Every time Nicholas visited his parents, they gave him food that was clearly past its prime. He never noticed because he hated looking at it and just handed it over to me. "Nicholas, this food is spoiled," I said, showing him the contents of the bag. He frowned and shrugged. "I'm sure it's fine," he said. "My mom wouldn't give us bad food." I sighed and threw the food away. It was pointless to argue with him. He was too trusting, too naive. The tension between me and my mother-in-law continued to grow. She would often make derogatory comments about me, and my father-in-law would just apologize, never really standing up to her. I tried to ignore it, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. One day, after a particularly nasty comment from my mother-in-law, I decided to confide in my brother. "I don't know what to do," I said, tears in my eyes. "She's making my life miserable." My brother, always the protector, was furious. "I'll handle this," he said. But I asked him not to. I didn't want to cause a rift in the family. Despite my internal frustration, I managed to keep things together. But then, something happened that changed everything. It was a typical evening when the call came. My father-in-law had been involved in a traffic accident and had passed away. We rushed to the hospital, and I found my mother-in-law already there, looking calm and collected. "Mom, how's Dad?" Nicholas asked, his voice trembling. "He passed away before I got here," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Nicholas broke down in tears, and I moved to comfort him. But then I heard it, a murmur from my mother-in-law. "Finally, the nuisance is gone." I froze. Did she really just say that? Her husband had just died, and instead of mourning, she seemed almost glad. The days that followed were a blur. I helped arrange the funeral while my mother-in-law did nothing but direct me. Nicholas defended her, saying she was having a hard time. but I was growing increasingly frustrated. One evening, as we were discussing living arrangements, Nicholas dropped a bombshell. "I'm worried about Mom," he said. "I think we should live together." I was shocked. "You can't just decide this without consulting me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not living with your mother." But Nicholas was insistent. "Mom feels lonely," he said. "She needs us." I was at a loss. I couldn't live with someone who had harassed me for so long. But then, something happened that changed everything. A week later, I went to the hospital for a routine checkup. I had been feeling unwell and wanted to make sure everything was okay. The doctor confirmed my suspicions. I was pregnant. As I left the hospital, I saw Nicholas waiting for me, his mother in the car. "We're going straight to my parents' house," he said. I was dismayed. "But our house is just a 3-minute walk from here," I said. My mother-in-law grinned. "Nicholas can sit in the passenger seat," she said. "You can walk home. It will only take an hour." I looked at Nicholas, who was busy fiddling with his smartphone. "Are you listening?" my mother-in-law asked, her voice mocking. I nearly sighed, but then decided I had had enough. I turned to my brother, who had come to meet me, and we started walking towards our house. As we walked, my brother explained that he had been investigating my in-laws. "I have some information about your mother-in-law," he said. I listened as he revealed the truth. My mother-in-law had been having an affair for years. She wanted to marry her lover, but my father-in-law wouldn't grant her a divorce. That's why she called him a nuisance. My heart sank. No wonder she had been so hostile towards me. She was taking her frustrations out on me and Nicholas. When we arrived home, I confronted Nicholas with the evidence. "Your mother has been harassing me for years," I said. "And now I know why." Nicholas was shocked. "I had no idea," he said. I handed him the investigation report. "You need to read this," I said. After reading the contents, his face turned pale. "I'm sorry," he said. "I had no idea she was capable of such things." The next day, Nicholas confronted his mother. I could hear their argument from inside the house. "I've had enough of your schemes," he said, his voice cold. I watched as he dragged his mother away, her protests falling on deaf ears. It was a side of Nicholas I had never seen before. A few hours later, I received a message from him. "I'm sorry about my family," he said. "I completely understand why you want to cut ties. I agree to the divorce." We decided to proceed with the divorce amicably. Nicholas committed to paying child support and agreed to give me a larger share of our assets. He seemed disheartened by the whole situation and appeared to have given up completely on our relationship. With the divorce finalized, I focused on my pregnancy and the upcoming birth of my daughter. My brother and his wife, Lisa, were a tremendous support. They helped me move into a new house, closer to the hospital, and provided emotional support. Lisa, who had been my friend long before she married my brother, was a godsend. "I've prepared some tea that's safe to drink during pregnancy," she said with a smile. I thanked her and settled into my new home. It was a peaceful place, a sanctuary from the chaos of my previous life. A few months later, I gave birth to my daughter, Faith. She was a beautiful baby, and I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the life she represented. I had made the right decision to leave Nicholas and his family. I knew I had to protect my daughter from the toxicity that had threatened our happiness. I heard through the grapevine that Nicholas had moved out of his mother's house and was working hard at a new job. My brother had referred him to a challenging workplace, and he was being trained rigorously. I hoped he would find his own path to happiness, but I knew I could never forgive him for not protecting us. As for my mother-in-law, she had been arrested after a rampage at her lover's place. She was eventually sent to a remote island where she would live alone. It was a fitting end to her reign of terror. Now, my life is filled with the joy of raising my daughter. I have my brother and friends to thank for their support. I am grateful for the life I have now, and I know that I made the right decision to leave my past behind. As I watch my daughter grow, I am reminded of the strength I found within myself. I am determined to give her the life she deserves, free from the shadows